charter meeting previously, but Dan, are we all good to go? We're live streaming, okay, so our new live streaming system is in place, and we are excited to be here, excited for the new facility, and hope that our patrons, our customers, will find it more enjoyable too, because our seating is larger, but it's very versatile and we can move things around, as you can see, and we hope that it will be of benefit not just to the ADE but to the other stakeholders as you are involved in the things that go on in this room. It's been a while since we have gathered, so just I know that there's been a lot going on, and we'll get some updates on where things are. First item, though, is the consent agenda and the minutes from the previous meeting. So are there any questions from our meeting in October or any corrections? If there are none, then I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is adopted. Okay. Microphone closer. 8 inches away. Okay. Okay. I'm good. Oh, okay, I'm good. All right. Is there? That's a good point, Dan. Is there anything else? Are there any other technology or anything else we need to go over with participants? I didn't think to ask about that. Okay, that's very good. Any questions on the tech procedures? Thank you, Dan. All right, then next is Ms. Kaufman.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Today we hope to have a conversation and bring you up to date with all of the things going on. And hopefully you'll give us some really good feedback about where we are and what we need to do next to ensure that we're being as transparent with this process as we possibly can be. So this morning I want to talk to you first of all. Dan? It's not advancing. There we go. As always, we like to start with our vision. Our vision is to transform Arkansas to lead the nation in student-focused education. And I hope that as all of our readers have read through our ESSA plan, that they can see throughout that plan that our attempt is to be student-focused in all of our decision-making. And I'm happy to report that here at the agency, and what I'm hearing more and more from school districts is that decisions are being made based on that vision. Is this a decision that's going to move us closer to having a student-focused educational system? And that's super exciting to all of us, I hope. I hope it's exciting to you to see this work really coming together. Our mission is to provide leadership, support, and service to schools, districts, and communities so that every student graduates prepared for college, career, and community engagement. And so I want to bring you back to a slide you may have seen before, but it's always good to kind of come back and get your bearings. The Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability System is made up of both our federal and our state accountability plans. And that's because our stakeholders said that to the best of our abilities that it was important to them that our systems be aligned. And I think equally important to this concept of student-focused educational system is that support comes before accountability. And so we are trying to live that here at the agency, and hope that our school districts will see that more and more evident in the way that we work. So under ESSA, which has replaced No Child Left Behind, you've been involved all along in that process from stakeholder feedback to an actually approved ESSA plan. Act 930 of 2017 updated our state accountability, which was ACTAP, to the Arkansas Educational Support and Accountability Act. Those rules have been through public comment and will be coming back to the state board for final approval. Act 744 updated our state rating system, and that's not only the A to F, but it's also rewards. And so you know that those rules went through on emergency, and we have implemented them for the 2017 data, and schools are receiving their checks, as you've probably been reading in the paper. So that ESSA plan was approved January 16th, and here we find ourselves May 29th, and we have been very, very busy in getting the word out to school districts and sharing data with our schools. We've put out informational documents on that page to help people begin to understand the plan. We've encouraged everyone to read the full plan, but we've provided informational documents for those people that maybe want to read a one-pager that kind of gives the gist of the information, and then hopefully they'll dig into the full document. I'll just tell you that in the CCSSO accountability meeting that I attended a month or so ago, we took our approach to communicating to stakeholders a little differently from other states, in that our first informational documents we put out were these 1-, 2-, and 3-page documents that kind of boiled it down to the gist. Other states started with writing their 400-page technical guide on how data would be collected. Now, they were saying in reflection that they wish they had started the way we did, with the simple, easy to understand documents, because they felt like they could have worked people more to those more technical documents instead of now trying to take the technical document and boil it down to a 1- or 2-pager. We also, as you know, released business rules for how we would calculate the ESSA School Index, and again, we did that in, while it felt like 40 pages, it was, in comparison to the 400 pages that other states produced, a much more user-friendly document that our stakeholders could understand. And I'm happy to report that we've had amazing feedback from our school districts, from teachers, and it's been so interesting in our meetings that we have people are actually walking in with their copy of the business rules and saying, if you'll look on this page right here, they've read them over and over, and they really have comprehended, and they're really living the use of that tool in their work. And so that's really exciting to us. As I said, Act 930 rules are pending. I'm assuming they'll be on our June board meeting for final approval, and I hope that everyone has a chance to read through those. Section 8 of those rules is about accountability, but the first 7 sections really go into the meat of what you're holding people accountable for. Great standards, excellent instruction, having the right educators, having well-trained, highly effective educators in place, having all of the components, all of the systems working together. And then when you do that, you have something to hold people accountable for. And so I think the way it's put together makes really good sense. The rules governing the public school rating system and school recognition program did go through as emergency rules so that we could apply those to our 2017 data, which was released April the 11th. We've had some pretty amazing conversations with our school districts about what's really going on in their schools, and I'm very happy to report that those conversations have sounded like we're really looking at how we're going to improve our reading, not just our reading scores, but reading with students. They're really looking more at their curriculum. They're having conversations about if there are underserved students in their school district and how to address the needs of those kids. It's been really an exciting time. The other part that I think has been really positive has been the reflection that I've heard from school leaders who've really delved into the data, and they're talking about this is really how we look, and it doesn't have to be how we look in the future. And so they've not been limited by a letter grade, but they've used the data in My School Info to start really valuable conversations about improvement. And so we're really excited about that. It's caused our school districts to rethink their procedures on data literacy, data quality. We've had lots of conversations about getting cleaner data into our systems and the effect of not having good, clean data in our systems. And so we're looking for more people to attend our meetings on data literacy. We've heard so many school leaders say that they're going back into their procedures and thinking about how well trained the people are that are entering data. And now that they see what the effects of that data are on their overall reports, they see how important that is. So these rules for the rating system have been out for public comment, and they are not finalized yet for us to use for the 2018 data, but we are continuing to work on that. I want to bring you back to our theory of action, and I won't read it to you, but I'll just kind of give you the gist of it. If the department sets up a support and accountability system, as our stakeholders have requested, then the department, along with our school districts and schools, will engage in continuous cycles of inquiry and improvement by using all of our resources to address the needs of the systems, and we're looking very much at those systems. As a result of that type of in-depth work and continuous work, then we should spark student learning, increase their readiness for college and career and community engagement, and begin to close some of these achievement gaps that we have long talked about. So that theory of action is the foundation for what our plan was built on, and the theory of action by which we measure how we are progressing. So I wanted to kind of share a little timeline with you. Starting at the, I guess, left of that, we started out by gathering stakeholder engagement across the state to develop our ESSA plan. We put that stakeholder information into our plan, which was approved in January. And then we released our 2017 ESSA School Index April the 11th of 2018. And this is really a critical part of our work, in that not only on that report did you see 2017 data, but our team was able to go back and also provide 2016 data so that school districts could begin to look at what is our pattern. So they used that exact same school index and applied it back to 2016 data so that we could begin to make these internal comparisons. The 2017 school year is the only year that our school districts have been able to not only see their ESEA reports, those red and green reports, but to also get to see their ESSA school index reports. And so that's giving school districts a lot of data as they transition out of No Child Left Behind into ESSA. That report, the 2017 ESSA School Index Report, is important to schools to look at how they are serving their populations of students, both their all students subgroup, their all students group, as well as their subgroups. That's important because our definition of consistently underperforming is 3 years of data. And so when we get 2018 data, we'll be looking back at 17 and 16. So that's very important that school districts are already looking at those underserved populations of students. In the yellow or orange circle, you'll see that currently we are providing general support to all districts to understand their data, to understand the cycle of inquiry, and to really have some in-depth conversations about their systems, the 6 systems that we identified in Act 930, but also the ones we've been going around talking about and you've heard us talk about before. Then moving on in our timeline for relationships and implementation, we are projecting to have our 2018 ESSA School Index Report and rewards out in October. So we'll have a very quick turnaround that the team is working diligently. We've come down to a timeline of days for each thing to happen that has to happen to make that available. And I want to just first say how exciting it is that we are able to move this timeline up. Historically, school districts would have received this report in April of the year following the year that it happened. And our team has worked really hard to put those timelines into something that makes sense. And so I say to you, it has not been easy. So for every timeline that we've moved, there have been hours of work to try to make that happen. And I'll give you an example. After the testing cycle ends, we do a corrections period. It's called corrections period, where school districts go in and record any student reason not tested. And so it makes sense to me that we would do that immediately after the test. However, we don't receive all the data back from our testing companies. In the past, we've not received that till July 1. And so what that means is school districts are being asked to correct long after they have their data on how well the students did or didn't do on the test. And so it's caused our schools not to pay full attention to providing complete and accurate data. And they've been very honest to say that's exactly what's been happening. So we've been trying to move that timeline up, and what we've run into, first of all, were contracts that our vendors have been very gracious to say we'll work with you and give you that data as quickly as possible. But also we found out that every year our e-school has a rollover period that we needed to work around, and this year they're doing some major upgrades to the system, which is going to take quite a bit of time. And so there's a lot of components to adjusting a timeline. So we are projecting right now that August 1st we'll be ready to open that window this year to make corrections or denote reasons not tested. Now, that's important because your school personnel are collecting documentation for reasons not tested. And so in the past, they've waited till way in the fall to provide that documentation. And we're trying to move that timeline up because we know that sometimes in the summer you have turnover, and a length of time just gives us more time to lose documentation. And so that's why we're trying to move that timeline up as quickly as possible. But that's just one of the components that goes into us having these reports finalized and ready to present to our school districts. So right now, October is the earliest that we can provide our reports. We're going to continue every year to try to make that earlier if possible, and to get the components in place earlier as possible. As that time goes on, we will continue to provide general support, and if you've read Act 930, you know we call that Level 1 general support. It's available to all school districts. We feel that the way we do that is through our website, through our communications, through our presentations at meetings, our conversations with school districts on the phone. We just want to be available to our school districts to help them understand and to answer any questions that they have. After our 2018 ESSA School Index is released, then we will identify schools in need of targeted support, schools in need of additional targeted support, and schools in need of comprehensive support. The requirements under ESSA require us to publicly release the numbers and the names of the schools that are identified. That information is based off of the guidance that we provided in our ESSA plan. During that time of identification, we'll be continuing to consult with the districts, and this very much is a relationship on the level of support that will be needed to assist the districts as they support their schools. And then finally, in keeping with our timeline then, in 2019, we project again that we'll have our ESSA School Index report ready by October 2019 or earlier if there's any way possible. So we're trying to work through all of those issues. Any questions about that? Anything that we could be doing or thinking through that we haven't thought through from your vantage point?
I don't have a question, but I do want to just commend the department on releasing those indexes and ratings at such an early date. As you know, when we receive those in April or so, the year is gone, we're in testing again, and it's hard to make adjustments. And it's so helpful for us to receive them just a couple of months into the school year to make any necessary adjustments to curriculum, and also to help really identify and hone in on those areas of weakness for individual students. So I appreciate that very much, and I'm sure schools across the state do.
Thank you. Any others?
Ms. Kaufman, when is the timeline on the consultation with the districts to determine levels of support? When are you looking at that for a timeline?
So we project that once we have our ESSA School Index, well, let me kind of back up and say, we're already looking at our 2017 data and looking at having conversations with schools this summer about you are potentially within that range of being in the lowest 5%. And then we are looking also at the schools that have subpopulations that are in the 1%. We've tried to let school districts kind of have a little time to think about it themselves and to reflect on. They should have a pretty good understanding of where they are. They don't know yet what the 5% and 1% cut lines are. We'll be releasing that soon, but we wanted them to have a little time to look at their data, to unpack it before they get caught up in I may be identified. What I hope that our school districts will take away from that is that's just where you are today. But working with the many partners that are available in Arkansas, there's no reason you have to stay there. So there's always going to be a lowest 5%. That's just mathematically how it works. But if we can continue to raise the cut score of where the lowest 5% of our schools are, then we are transforming Arkansas. And that's our vision. So I hope that you will discourage anyone who speaks poorly of school districts, that I just have to think about it just like I would a child, a kid or a grandkid, is a low score or a low grade is just where you are today. we would make a plan to make it better. And that's that's the viewpoint that we're taking. What's not acceptable is continuing to underserve kids when you know better. And so I hope that our data, the way that our stakeholders have asked us to put it together, is really informative to schools about what's really going on, and a lot of the projections that you can look at about what's going on. And so we just want to spend some time with schools with having those really deep conversations. And so I'll just give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, I was looking at a school district, just pulled up My School Info, and I'm looking at them, and just to look at their overall score, they looked pretty good. And then when I started digging, what I realized is that a really low reading score. And so the number of students proficient on or above grade level reading was quite low in high school. And then when I flipped back and looked at the elementary, it was even lower. And so I can look at that low score and I could be concerned. But when I looked back and saw a lower elementary score, now I have a sense of urgency to contact that district, because they're not going in a path that's going to show progress long term. They're going in a path that's going to show a decrease over time. And so those are the things that our school districts haven't had yet time. They just got the reports publicly April the 11th. We need to give them time to dig through and digest and learn how to use our reports in My School Info well enough to really dig deep into their data and get past the numbers. Get past the numbers into really having an understanding of what this data can tell me, not just about today, but where my district is headed if we don't get in there and do some different work.
So you're saying the process has kind of already started a little bit now, and you think maybe late fall?
By late fall, once we've identified schools formally in need of support, but hopefully we're having those conversations all along. We're not looking to make a one-to-one match with our levels of support. Just because you have a school in need of comprehensive support, you may not be at a level 3 or a level 4 of support. It's going to be a relationship. I have to look at what can you do to help yourself first as a school district, because the district should be supporting the schools. So can that district support that school now that they have better data? Can they network with other districts to better support these schools? How are they reaching out to their co-ops and to their STEM centers and their ERZs to get support? Because those are places that, we as an agency have put funding into those places to be supports to schools. How are you utilizing your partners? And our state is so fortunate to have so many partners that are dedicated. Other states' partners are fighting with each other. Ours aren't. Ours are so united in this vision for helping school districts improve that if you want help as a school district, people will trip over themselves to help you. And so are they asking for help, and are they asking for the right kind of help? And then, of course, are they utilizing vendors appropriately to help them progress? And so through those kind of conversations, we'll know what kind of support. I don't think it's important for the department to have to be in a district. It's important to be in a district when the district needs us.
Thank you.
So in looking at our timeline, I think, have accomplished a lot in approximately 5 months, but I think we have a lot to go. We are just in the beginning stages of implementation, but very important work has been going on, and I think we're having more and more people in our state understand our plan and feel like they're a part of the implementation. So a part of Act 930, which goes along with this work, is school level improvement planning. And so I love one place I read recently, instead of calling it school improvement planning, they called it school success planning. And I really like that. So for our schools, we've asked them to build their school improvement plans with the help of their stakeholders and to submit those plans to their school districts by May 1st. So here again, Dr. Jeffcoat, we're moving these timelines to where they make more sense. During that time between May 1st and August 1st, school districts and their schools are working together and planning the support necessary to make that plan actually work. They're taking it to their board for approval and posting it to their district website by August 1st. So if the plans are made with stakeholders and then posted for stakeholders to be able to read, that's our first most important accountability. You're accountable to the patrons of your community. This is what we said we would do to improve, and this is what we're doing to improve. The district is responsible for monitoring those plans to ensure that they are being implemented. But we also understand that part of our plan, do, check model of that continuous cycle of inquiry is, as you're monitoring, if it's not working, you're adjusting. So we've been very clear with our school districts that if you see the need to adjust your plan, because we don't want you to continue to be working a plan that's not working for you. If it's not showing the progress that you expect or desire, then you should change it. Once you've changed it, you just go through the process and update it on your website and make a little note, updated, revised, whatever date that is. That's clear and transparent to your population, to your public, what your intentions are. So our school districts, basically we believe that most of our schools have submitted their school improvement plans to their districts. We're not policing May 1st, but we're saying we're trying to put you onto a timeline that makes sense. You should have a plan in place that's been reviewed and approved by August 1st at the beginning of school. Doesn't that just make sense? In the past, we've asked for plans in October. It just doesn't make sense. So get your plan reviewed. We're also putting the power back into the district where it should be. You don't submit these to the department. You're submitting them to your district, to your school board, to your public. We can access it from the website just like everybody else does. And we will. We'll be reading those. But the people that should be holding you responsible the most are the citizens of your community. I don't know if you've read Mike Schmoker's book. He has several out, but in Results Now and again in Focus, he really encourages us to lessen the minutia of paperwork, to put more time into our work. And so in this one, he's even called out state departments. And so we're taking this very much to heart. And this is making some people nervous because they've been so used to lists and everything that they're not really sure yet how this is going to be received. They want to make sure they need to have trust. But if we can free up redundant work or unnecessary work, then it gives you as educators more time to be educating kids. And if we're going to transform Arkansas, that's how we're going to do it. We're going to be educating kids. We're going to be working with kids to ensure their learning. And so that's what we're being very conscious to do. Reduce anything that doesn't necessarily have to be done so that more learning can take place. Comments or feedback on that?
Ms. Kaufman, if an adjustment is made to the plan, does it have to go again before the board?
If they make a revision?
Yes.
I mean, I would if it's a substantial revision. If it's just a minor revision, you know, that's up to your superintendent. I probably would, just to make sure that the public is aware. I wouldn't let it hold me back from getting the work done. But I would certainly want, the object here is for transparency and accountability. So I've publicly declared to my community, these are the things we're doing to improve. We're not satisfied with where we are today. We want to be better. And this is how we're going to do it. And the requirements under ESSA require us to have stakeholder engagement. And also in Act 930, we replicated that. Stakeholder engagement is required in the school improvement process. So part of engagement is the transparency.
Ms. Kaufman, I'd love to hear some thoughts that the members of this panel might have on this, but what have you been hearing, or your team been hearing, in the conversation about this particular topic? Because, you know, that's one thing that we had a lot of in the past. We've had a lot of templates. We've had a lot of things, 45-day reports. We've had, you know, and frankly, in a lot of districts that have struggled the most, it doesn't seem that these templates have helped them drive improvement, because you look and the results haven't really changed over a 3-year period of time. What does your team see, or what are they hearing on this approach that we're taking of simplifying and letting the schools drive what the templates look like, what the formats look like? Or is it too early for any of that feedback?
So I think we have some initial feedback. We have some school districts that are super excited, and they are off to the races. I've talked to some superintendents. We've had some examples sent to the department of the work that our schools are doing. We've had schools that are purposefully not providing templates, and their schools have created their school improvement plans. They've peer reviewed each other's plans. They've brought it then to the district for review. I think personally they've turned out some of the best plans I've ever seen their district write. We've talked to a superintendent week before last that they started by outlining what a graduate would look like in their district, and they committed that to terminology, to paper, kind of like we do with a vision. And they've submitted their plan just like they would have out of compliance before, but they are already in conversation of that's not how they want to do business in the future. So they're already in the process of doing it the way that they want to do it, the more creative, thoughtful, data-driven way that we've talked about and they've read about. So I think that's what we're hearing already from school districts that are very excited. We still have school districts that are just give me a template. But what they've also confessed is they've just completed their templates out of compliance. And when you're doing it out of compliance, then people don't have it, they're not living it. They're not making their decisions based on what they put into their plan. They're not adjusting their plan. They're just doing what they've always done. And therefore they're getting the results they've always gotten, or they're not even getting the results as well as they used to get. Because they've had some of that slide into behaviors that haven't been as effective for them. So I'm very positive about this, because I think as the more our districts have the opportunity to do this, the more districts are networking with each other, the more we as an agency are lifting up their voices, the better our state will be as a result of it. And so if we come back to what I talked about earlier about, you know, can the districts support their own schools? Can the districts network with other districts to better support their schools? And if we kind of follow that hierarchy of support into a district, what that does is it allows the districts to be able to fish for themselves and to know when they need help, how to confidently reach out for help. And I think that's what our goal is. And I think that's what Smoker is saying to us. If I keep enabling you for bad behavior, you're going to keep behaving badly. And so when we've enabled compliance, then all we've gotten is compliance. And so what we're saying is, and I think what he's saying to us is enable data-driven decision-making. And when we enable that, that's what we'll get. So yes, go
Let me
ahead.
just say too, the only thing I would add is that I think right now we're going through the period of transition where we're really shifting our approach on accountability and how the department supports schools in the sense that in the past we had requirements that we had to meet and certain boxes we had to check, and with more local control now, there is a shift in thinking on for each individual school to come up with how they're gonna really improve the quality of education for their kids and their community. And the more schools that we connect with and we have conversations with and we hear those stories of how they're creating their plans, I think it's going to help us as a state become better. But I really admire this new train of thought on supporting that concept of local control. I think if we're going to improve our schools, it's going to happen because we improve our schools. It's not going to be because someone is directing us on how we can improve our schools. I think it's going to be a genuine interest and a desire to make a difference, and we do that by really reflecting on where we are and developing a plan that's going to get us to where we want to be.
And I would add to that, Dr. Jeffcoat, that we're not lessening our requirements. We still have laws, we still have rules, and we are very much committed to following those and implementing those. But we're trying to put those into the context of how that helps you to be a better school, not the minimum level of performance of where we want you to stay, but more of a foundation of where we want you to grow from.
And I think of those plans, Ms. Kaufman mentioned the ones that we've had a chance to review, the ones that are the most exciting, that have, in my view, the most promise, are districts that really did bring in the classroom teacher to be part of that planning process. I mean, it wasn't just a cursory or perfunctory thing for the teachers. They really got to dig in, and you can see. I mean, when in those plans that come through and you look, you can tell when a teacher or a group of teachers has had a hand in it versus when it hasn't. And that's exciting. And I think as far as our teachers in the state of Arkansas, they are going to feel, as we grow in this, they are going to feel that they really do have a seat at the table and a voice, because they know what their kids need, and they know, you know, the policies or the things, the structures that create the hurdles for them in meeting those needs. So that's where we are really excited that in a template that comes from the State Department, you miss those opportunities for that authentic teacher voice to be part of it.
And you know, the more we have the authentic educator voice being heard, then we're hearing more voices from students and more voices from parents and community. And so I think that ripple effect is, we're going to see that happen as well. All right, so in our plans, we are following a plan, do, check model. And so basically, even though check is number 3, that's really where you always start, is where are we? What do we know about ourselves? What do we do well? What do we need to improve? We need to look at all students. We need to look at our subgroups of students. And then at the school level, you're looking at individual students. And you're making a plan of what's the most proactive thing that we can do that's going to bring about the change that we desire. Sometimes that is to stop doing some things, which is equally as critical as to start doing some things. Sometimes it's sustain doing the things that are right, that are moving us forward. We have not asked our school districts to make huge progress. We've asked our school districts to make steady progress, continuous progress. Is just start to work hard so that you can rejoice in just seeing your numbers moving in the right direction. But unlike No Child Left Behind, there are not those set marks that you have to meet each year. We're saying to you, what's something that you can be proud of? And something you can be proud of sometimes is 1 point or 2 points or 3 points. That's something you can be proud of. And that's kind of the direction that we want our schools to go in. As they're identifying those evidence-based practices that they want to employ, and the reason we're so pushing evidence-based practice is education has historically known how to educate kids, but yet we don't follow what the research says works. And I reflect on, as a classroom teacher, sometimes we didn't even know what the research was. But once I learned how to help a student comprehend their reading, then it's my professional responsibility to employ those strategies and to teach those strategies well so that my students are excellent readers. And so, not to quit when it gets hard, but to persist through that of following what we know from research and how to teach kids. Really monitoring that learning. And that's what the do is. You have to put this plan into place, but you have to monitor the learning, not the teaching. Sure, we monitor the teaching. All administrators are monitoring the teaching, but we need to really be monitoring the learning. It's not enough to say, Ms. Newton, you've been there. It's not enough to say, I taught this. It's, did they learn it? And do they really understand it? Did they learn it for our test on Friday? Or do they have a knowledge of this that's ready to be carried on and built upon so they carry that forward? Anthony, you're in college, and those things that you learned, you're building on those, and you're strengthening your understandings, and you're clarifying what you really know that you carry forward with you into what your career is going to be. That's what we're asking our schools to think about in this do section. How am I monitoring that learning, that thorough understanding? And so that's a time when you have really authentic formative assessments. You may be using some general assessments to kind of get a gauge for your school, but this is a time to really know what your kids can do. And so by the time I look at the end of the year, I don't have to hope they've passed the test or hope that they've done well. I know who can do well and how much they should have grown. I know because of that I'm monitoring the learning. And so that's a continuous cycle of inquiry. You're using a continuous cycle of inquiry all the time. You used one to get up and get here today. You know, oh, I've got to go to an ESSA steering committee meeting today. What time do I need to leave the house? What do I need to take with me? How long will I be there? What time will I get home? What route will I take? You're constantly running through these cycles of inquiry. You checking, oh, I'm going to be on time because I'm at a certain place on the highway at a certain time. So you were doing that, and as adults, we're doing that all the time. What we're just saying is we need to be applying that to our work. We need to be applying this continuous cycle of inquiry to the work. We need to be looking at our students and checking what they're learning to say, are we on the right track? Am I on the right track with this student? Am I on the right track with this class, with this grade, with this building? Have we utilized our resources in a way that students are learning? Because in reality, that's why you're there, is to teach kids and for kids to learn. That's what the public has asked us to assemble kids together in a school district for, to ensure learning. And so that continuous cycle of inquiry is so important to make sure that we are providing those opportunities for learning and ensure that they're happening. The way that we're doing that, and this is what our districts will be looking at, is are these systems working effectively to support that cycle of inquiry? Every school district has these systems within their educational system. They don't always work efficiently. They don't always work effectively. Sometimes they're dysfunctional, but they do exist. So, do you have an academic system that is supporting learning for all kids or for some kids? Is it leaving some kids out? I worked in a school district where they had a curriculum that was great for the majority of the kids, but even one kid that it's not addressing doesn't mean that we have to change the curriculum for everyone else, but we employed a different set of tools for this one child to ensure that the learning was happening. Do I have the right people in the right places, and are they well trained? So sometimes our school districts are offering professional development days, and the public may or may not understand why. I've heard that so many times. Well, didn't you go to college? Why are you going to professional development? I mean, I want to be the very best educator possible. That's why I'm continuing to learn. But it's important that we're communicating that to our public. It's important that your teachers are learning. It's important that your administrators are learning. Do we have student support system in place that's taking care of kids that are excelling, that understand, that already have a deep understanding so that they're engaged? Do we have a system that's helping kids that are struggling? Do we have a system that's engaging kids to take on challenges they might not take on? Are we thinking about our facilities in a way that promotes learning? Are we thinking about our transportation in a way that promotes learning? You know, have we set up resources so that kids can stay after school for additional help? Are they going on great field trips that promotes learning? Have we set up policies and procedures? Are we utilizing our resources the way that is bringing about learning, or are we just using them the way we've always used them? And finally, are we communicating with our public? Not to, with. Are you getting feedback? Are you really, truly listening? Do they really, truly understand what you're trying to accomplish, and are they a part of it? Engagement doesn't mean they have to show up for a meeting. Engagement means that they know what's going on and they're supportive of it, that they're a part of it. They feel invited. They feel engaged. They feel a leadership role. So as we're putting this together, what we're asking is, what does the data tell you about your district and your schools that you need to investigate? How do your school improvement plans reflect the areas of need? How do they reflect what you're sustaining? How do they reflect what you're doing away with? How will you know the plans are being implemented and progress is being made? These are the questions that you're constantly asking yourself every day. And then, how do I know that plan's working? And then what do I need to do about it? What do I need to keep? What do I need to change? And the cycle continues. And then with those supports, how are those supports helping us to have a successful school improvement plan that's really showing progress? How are those systems working independently and together to support the learning in the school for every child? And so one of the first things that we've done is a little rearrangement here in our office, and I'm going to ask Roy Cosby to come up and give you a brief explanation of some changes that we've made.
Good morning. Roy Cosby, Standards for standards and system support. I've got to get used to saying this too. Standards and system support. What we have done is combine the school improvement unit with the standards for accreditation unit. And if you'll notice on the map, we have 8 regions. The map may look a little lopsided. Originally, the map was devised with the number of schools, but we obviously know we're working with districts, and districts assist their schools. So with combining school improvement and standards for accreditation, we want to have the ability to assist school districts in whatever assistance they need. In the past, with the standards for accreditation unit, I would say we had communication daily with districts. With the school improvement unit, basically they have been working with just a handful of school districts. Well, now we're turning into working with every school district within the state. Does it make any difference what kind of status they're in or what part of the state they're in? We just want to provide them with assistance. We want them to be able to call us first. And the reason I'm saying that is this summer we're going to be very busy, and we have already started receiving a tremendous amount of professional development. So if a school district calls, we may not have the answer for them immediately, but we'll know who we need to contact, work with those within the Department of Education to getting that information, providing that maybe professional development. Maybe we need to provide at the cooperatives. We will be obviously providing a little bit of professional development at the cooperatives, some of the conferences this summer. Also, I want to say with the 8 regions, I do not want to stand up here and say those will be the names that'll be up there at the beginning of the school year, because obviously we have retirements going on, some people looking for maybe applying for other employment. Well, we will have 8 regions. And how this was devised is we paired up a school improvement person with a standards for accreditation. So as they are learning together within their offices, learning with each other, teaching with each other, this worked out to be a very good system. So be patient with us. This is something new that we have started. We're learning every day. I'm excited about providing information to the districts, whatever that information that they may need. Again, we want them to be able to feel very comfortable in calling us at any time. It's non-threatening. If they want assistance, we want to provide assistance for them. So when we begin the 18-19 school year, that is our objective in assisting those school districts. We don't want to get them in a situation where it's too late. We want to be proactive and share ideas with other school districts as we go through this. So as we go through this, the training this summer, and then getting prepared for the 18-19 school year, this is going to be ongoing, a good experience for us. I believe a good experience for the school districts. I will say, with my background for the standards for accreditation, the school districts, my old area was Area 3. Those administrators felt very comfortable in calling us at any time. What do we need to do to correct this? What we need to do to alleviate that? And that's what we want to do with the school improvement and with standards for accreditation with our new standards and system support. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
And just a quick note on Region 8, that's Pulaski County. So, older map, new number. All right. The next item on our agenda is to talk about our business rules. And as you know, we released business rules for calculating the 2017 ESSA School Index Score. And we learned a lot during that time. Hopefully our school districts learned a lot as well. And Louis Farron will talk to us about our 2018 business rules.
Good morning. I'm going to be mentioning just a few differences in the 17 business rules and the 2018 ESSA School Index Score business rules. I would encourage everyone listening, if you haven't read the Arkansas Every Student Succeeds Act plan, or if you haven't looked at the educational documents, to go to arkansased.gov, and on the web page, If you click on the Read Arkansas Every Student Succeeds Act plan in the blue background, click on the text there. That will let you read the Arkansas plan that was approved by the U.S. Department of Education. And also, you'll be able to see all the informational documents that we have on the website. That arrow points to where the 2017 business rules are located. Those business rules were reviewed by the Council of Chief State School Officers, and they were complimentary of our business rules. They said that the Arkansas business rules could be used as a template by the other states to create their business rules. Another thing I'd like to mention about this page, you see there's 19 things shown here, but there are lots more informational documents below that. There are lots of recorded webinars, PowerPoints, things like how to access your accountability reports with MySchoolInfo, information about graduation rate calculations, growth calculations, how to calculate the School Quality and Student Success Indicator. And this shows where the draft 2018 business rules are located. You can go to this Commissioner's Memo COM 18090 and you can look at the business rules. We are currently looking at the review that CCSSO provided of our business rules. They had 2 different people review our business rules, and we're possibly going to change the 18 business rules based on that feedback. Now, one of the differences in the 2018, we had 2 data pulls. We had a data pull for accountability or test scores for ACT Aspire on April 6th. April 6th is where we expect a student to have received their instruction. They should have received their instruction at the school where they enrolled on April 6th. And we also had a data pull for participation and percent tested on May the 7th. And that's 4 days from the end of the testing window. So we expect the student to have tested by then. Having different dates makes it easier to use data for their correct school when the student is moving from one school to a different school. As we mentioned, the accountability for test scores will go to the school where the student was enrolled on April 6th. Now, there's a rule in the ESSA law that says a student needs to be enrolled for the same school for at least half a school year before we can use their test scores. So the ADE starts that half a school determination on October 1. And if a student who hasn't been tested transfers to a different school, we pull the information on May 7th, expecting them to test at that school where they're at on May the 7th. Schools where students enroll on April 6th, but they didn't test, but they were not found enrollment on May 7th, they can possibly make an entry in the assessment correction engine. They can possibly exclude them from expecting to test by making an entry. Some of the things that probably the most common on this would be if the student had moved out of state. So they could make an entry, student has withdrawn, and then they could upload evidence. Anytime you make a change in the assessment correction engine, you have to upload evidence. So the school would have received a request for records from an out-of-state school, and then they would upload the request for records in the assessment correction engine. And some of the reasons not tested it shown here: medical emergency, extended hospitalization, students who are in residential facilities, students who are homeschooled, students who are either homeschooled or private schooled who are enrolled in an academic course at a school, incarcerated, juvenile detention, deceased. That last was withdrew from school, I mentioned earlier. There was a change for recently arrived English learners or students who are first year in the U.S. In the past, if they're first year in the U.S., they haven't been required to take the English Language Arts test. But now they will take the English Language Arts test, and the first year when they're in the U.S., we will not use that test score. But in the next year, we will use the score from the first year to calculate the growth in the test score. And also, in the third year that the student is here, we'll start using their scores for accountability. Another thing that's changed, the 2018 business rules has new English language arts CUT scores. The national ACT test only has one CUT score for the Ready for English language arts for each grade level. Arkansas has asked for additional CUT scores. They use the ACT uses the standard error measurement method to calculate 2 additional CUT scores. 2 sims below is the close CUT score, and anything below that would be in need of support. And then 2 sims above the Ready would be the exceeding CUT score. If you want to see more about this, you can go to Appendix A of the 2018 Business Rules. There are 2 links down there that talk about changes that have occurred in the ACT exam, and also more information about the sims. And Susan Gray from Student Assessment is also here. If you have questions for her, I'm sure she could answer questions about that also. Now this shows the new CUT scores for close, Ready, and exceeds. Another thing is the course code lists have been updated. You're probably aware for school quality and student success, we give points for students that get credit for advanced placement, international baccalaureate, concurrent credit, computer science. So you can look in Appendix B and see those new course code lists. And this is one of the pages from the computer science course code list. If you're familiar with the 2017 business rules, you'll notice that this looks quite a bit different from the computer science list that was in the 2017. And this has the contact information for the school performance unit. It's got our phone numbers, our email addresses. I'd like to encourage anyone that has any questions to email us or call us at any time, and we'll be glad to provide more information on accountability. Does anyone have questions at this point?
I think one important piece of this is having the business rules ahead of time as we move forward. Because this time, obviously, we didn't. There's no way that was feasible. But schools, school leaders, educators will have a better understanding of the how. As we're the transition from 17 to 18, talk about some of the conversations and feedback we've been getting on that process and how y'all have used that to help tweak the 18 business rules.
So our intention is to, as you said, provide those rules ahead of time. Every year there will be business rules. And the reason you need those every year is there are just little tweaks that need to be identified. And then sometimes there are big tweaks that need to be identified. But it is a part of our commitment to transparency. It's important that school districts are reviewing. And the review process, we've been very diligent about putting these business rules out in this, for example, in this commissioner memo. And as soon as we have taken in the feedback from CCSSO on this one, we'll put out the final business rules, and then we will immediately go to work on getting the 2019 business rules drafted and put them out. But you always want to build on the dates. So what's important in here and what will always change are those data collection points. And those data collection points are very important for you to have the cleanest data possible. So it's important that you're dropping kids appropriately, that you're enrolling students appropriately, that you've documented what those students, who they are demographically. That's very critical. And it's also important that you have documentation. But we're also closing some of those gaps that we found in our systems. So one of the things that you will see as we move forward is sometimes someone may come to you and say, well, we didn't have to account for those kids before. You're right. And we figured it out. So it's important that we are accounting for every student. And so we found some loopholes in our previous systems where some students were not testing and we really didn't have documentation of why. And so we're trying to close all of those little loopholes because every student is important. But there are certainly reasons why a student would not test. And so if it's a valid reason. One of the things that you'll see change is we've changed our number of items for reason not tested to, previously we had feedback that people just wanted to give a lot of reasons why kids didn't take the test, but they didn't change the fact that they counted against you. So we've just merged that together. But that way the list of reasons not tested, other than that one, are really reasons that this child might be considered for exclusion for counting in the assessment. But it's very important that we know where all the students are. You are required by state law to test every student. We believe in this so much that we have included in our standards for accreditation that school districts should test at least 95% of their students. So this is, that when you look at that, it's a part of accountability that our state has asked you to test your students. There are reasons why you don't. But when adults are standing in the way of testing kids or looking for loopholes, that's not right. And so data are important. It's equally important that you're then talking to the students and their parents about those test scores. They're not the end-all be-all, but they're important. Our state's put a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of human resources into providing this data back to families, and so they deserve to have that. Do you want to go into some of the other changes? So
Well,
the ELA cut scores.
yeah, we
Okay.
need to cover that one.
So these ELA cut scores are a change. And Susan's here to back me up, I guess. So Susan, you might want to come stand by me for moral support. But ACT recently did some work on their cut scores for data that they did not previously have. And as a result of that work at ACT, there's a ripple effect again that caused cut scores to need to be reset for ACT Aspire. And if you set, see if I can take us back to that page. If you match these up to our previous cut scores that we had, there is a change at grades 4 through 10, and, well, there's a change 3 through 10, but the change in third grade dropped the cut score number and raised the cut score numbers for 4 through 10. So, Melissa, it brings about a little change in your score. And so we anticipated that. We didn't know how much it would be, but we knew that there would be. So I asked Denise to take our 2017 data and that we already have, that we already know and trust, and to run it as if these were our cut scores instead of our 17 cut scores. And what we saw is there was a significant difference to our school districts. In fact, that it would change the scores for many of our districts by a letter grade. That's how much of a just a point or two here or there can make. And so then I asked her to run our cut scores for our letter grades for the school rating system, to take the cut scores as they are with 17 and what would they need to be to have a similar result of what we had in 17 with that same data. And so we will be proposing in our rules to make a change, to make that adjustment, so that school districts can have confidence in that concordance between our school rating system. Okay, we're all in agreement here.
Let me make sure I understand. You're saying the 18.
Oh, we don't ask
I'm
a hard
sorry.
question now.
It's not hard. I just want to make sure I understand. You're saying that the 18 you're going to adjust from what Aspire has to make it align with what we have for the 17.
So what I'm saying is for 2018, we're going to employ new ELA cut scores as per ACT Aspire, right here, these
Okay.
cut scores. And as a result of that, we are going to recommend to the state board that there be an adjustment to the cut scores for A to F,
Okay.
so that we've done the concordance on those A to F cut scores, so that they will be consistent.
So the what the student gets will be like this,
Yes,
but what the district has for A to F will be aligned with the 17.
it will be,
Okay.
it will be a concordance aligned cut score.
Okay.
So I can't guarantee what your letter grade will be,
Right.
because it depends on what your 2018 scores are. But what I can say is that our recommended adjustment to the cut scores for A to F through a process
Okay.
is concordant with what we saw in the 2017. Right? Add all the other ones, Denise.
Well, I was thinking, Susan, you can confirm too, the reason for the ELA cut scores being adjusted is that they are aligned to college ready on the ACT.
Right.
And so whenever ACT does work to make sure that their assessment system is feeding into, at the student level, this score means a student is college and career ready,
Right.
then it's important that that system of scores get updated so that schools, and particularly parents and students, have that most recent information about the readiness of their student. That's at the student test level.
That's right, and they were reset in 15.
Susan, get a little closer to the microphone.
The ELA cut for the ACT at grade 11 was what was reset. And then they had to wait until students had also taken Aspire so that they could confirm the readiness. So in 17, it's now ready to report that. So that accounts for the ELA.
Right. And that's the student level. So this way, students and parents and their teachers are always getting that accurate information about a student's trajectory for college and career readiness. Because we're staying in tune with college and career ready, which is what ACT Aspire and the ACT give us information about at the student level, we had to look, as Ms. Coffin has said, we have to look at whether or not that impacts school level scores. And so that was the work that we did. And we're projecting that what will happen in 2018 if we use these new student level cut scores, schools overall ESSA index scores will be slightly lower if nothing else changed, right? So we want any changes to ESSA index scores to reflect changes that schools are making.
Yeah.
We want to control for that,
Okay.
right?
That makes sense.
So we have to, if the stakeholders, what the stakeholders intended for A through F is to remain the same kind of definition of an A school means this, a B school means this, a C school means this, then we have to adjust the A through F cut scores in order to keep that meaning valid for our schools. So we're keeping the meaning at the student level valid by using the updated ACT Aspire cut scores, and then we're making adjustments in A through F to keep that so it's a valid representation. So what Ms. Kaufman was saying is we've used 2017 data in order to identify, using the 2018 cut scores, a school level A through F cut that identifies the same proportion of schools. So that's how we're making sure that we're keeping that validity on the school level while also accommodating the validity at the student level.
That makes sense, thank you. Yeah, got it now.
That's exactly what I said.
I know, but I just didn't get it the first time. I didn't hear it that second time.
Usually I translate for Denise.
Yeah.
Really, what you're saying is that we established a new baseline with the 2017 results. We're going to maintain this baseline at this point. There will be a point in the future where a recalibration of that baseline will happen, but it will happen in a manner that reflects expectations as growth occurs and that distribution of scores in schools moves in a positive direction. Then a recalibration will, but this was not the time to do that, because really it would have been pulling the rug out from under before they even got accustomed to what this new baseline was. So, so some that might look at this as, well, are you lowering the bar? No, we're not lowering the bar. As a matter of fact, we're planning to keep raising the bar in an appropriate way with stakeholder feedback as results come in through. We've not yet implemented our ESSA plan at the school level, so we want to see the bar raised as schools are implementing their plans at the school level, showing benefits to the students.
Letting it soak in.
So how frequently does ACT reset their scores? I'm thinking of other content areas, is this going to happen next year for math, or the next, or?
Over a period of time. I don't know the exact.
Come on up, Susan. Yeah. The folks watching on TV.
No, I'm trying to stay back there. I don't know the exact schedule, but it's not as frequently as annually, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah. And ELA, it was the first time they had actually set that cut in 2015. They had reported reading, English, and writing separately, so they decided to set that cut on the three combined.
Let's see. Thank you.
So I think the thing that I want most is that school districts have confidence in their accountability system. And the way for us to have confidence in that accountability system is to be cognizant of any of these minor changes, and we adjust with them. And then when a major change comes along, we're ready to make that adjustment as well. Okay. So Lewis alluded to our CCSSO review of our business rules. We're going through that with great detail. We appreciate our partnership with CCSSO to do this work. We didn't know that was coming, but they made the offer and we jumped on it, and they were very quick and timely in giving us a response. We feel confident that we've been given some really great feedback about our work and how to make it clearer to the public. And so I think you'll see that reflected in our 2018 business rules. What I wanted you to also know is that, again, with our partnership with CCSSO, we have aligned with Battelle for Kids, and you may remember them. They worked with us early on with our ESSA plan. They helped us begin to organize our ESSA plan and build some graphics for it, help us to put it all together. They've been a great partner. Battelle for Kids is helping us run some focus groups this summer. They're reaching out to parents and community members to get feedback on our ESSA School Index reports and our report card. And so they're going to be asking some people to meet with them. And so if anyone in your community is asked to participate, I hope that you will encourage them to be a part of that and have a voice on our reports. They'll be also sending out some surveys. And so if you receive that survey, I would request that you complete it because your feedback is very important. But if you have written recommendations, you can submit those to them or to us, either one. This is not just a one-time event. They have been gracious enough to allow our team to participate in every step of this process, and so we'll be doing some process observer work as they're holding focus groups so that in the future we can continue to hold these types of meetings and gain feedback on our reports to make them better and better. Part of ESSA requires us to have parent-friendly reports, and so part of that is to know what our parents and community members want to know and how they want to know it. And so we'll be asking that question many, many times, I'm sure. So at this time, Dan, if you'll jump over to our second PowerPoint, Lewis is going to walk you through where information is, and that will start our conversation of what we have now and then any feedback that you have to help us know how to do it better for schools would be appreciated.
What Ms. Kaufman said about their testing, how important it is to test all the students, I just wanted to say another couple words about that. There's a new requirement in the ESSA law that says when you calculate achievement, you divide not necessarily by the number of students tested, but you divide by the greater of the number of students tested or the number of students that make up 95% that were enrolled. So, and that even your mobile students, make sure that they're all tested. Make sure every subgroup is tested, because when you calculate, like when we calculate weighted achievement for each student subgroup, we'll have to divide not necessarily by the number tested, but maybe by the 95% of the number that were there. Okay, now this is a page from MySchoolInfo. You can go to arkansas.gov and scroll down just a little bit on the left side of the page. You'll see the link for MySchoolInfo. On this web page right here, Chafin has already been, the school has already been entered and selected. When you go into MySchoolInfo, you just type part of a school name, and it'll have a list of schools that have that text, and just click on the little search button, click on the school, and then click on the little search button, and it'll pull up a page that looks like this. And then if you click on the name of the school in red again, it'll take you to a page that looks like this. And you can see a tab on the right says reports. A tab just left of that says school rating. So for this school, we're going to click on the school rating, and it'll pull up the accountability at a glance for this school. You notice there's a rating scale on the right for this grade span. It shows you 78.37 and above is A. You can look over on the left and see their score 84.16, so they're well in the A range. If you scroll down on that page, you can see more information. You can see the state accountability was 84.16, and the ESSA School Index was 84.37. You might wonder about that, but if you notice, Chafin is in Fort Smith, and Fort Smith has an ALE school. In the new rule for calculating A through F, we take the students that are in ALE and we move them to their regular attendance zone school. So evidently Chafin had at least one of these students, so that's why their state score is a little bit lower. For the federal ESSA School Index, we can't move any students. We have to do ESSA School Index for every school, even the ALEs. So that's why there's a little difference here.
Is that the same if a school district has an ALE that has its own LEA?
Yes.
Okay, so
If it
they'll
has
be
its own
applied.
LEA number,
Okay.
yes. So those schools will be moved for A through F.
Gotcha.
And this is the bottom part of that. You can see for each student subgroup what their ESSA School Index score would be. You can see like the special ed, it's a little bit lower here. It's very important for schools to focus on every subgroup and not overlook any. Now this is back to, if you clicked on the reports tab, reports you have available. One of the reports is the ESSA School Index. One of the reports, School Report Card. So we're going to, like if we clicked on the ESSA School Index, it would pull this up. This is the same school selected. This is the overview ESSA School Index report. The overview kind of, it includes all of the different indicators that it included for the ESSA School Index. This shows how this school is better than the state average. That box kind of in the middle shows the state average 72.59, but Chafin Junior High had 84.37. There's lots of information. You can scroll down and see more and more information. One of the things that's really nice about My School Info, you can put your mouse on part of a bar and you can see the school wherever you're pointing to. Like on this slide, I pointed to the L.A. Chafin Junior High, and you can see it. If you moved your mouse up, it would show the school that was just above them. If you move your mouse down, it would show the school that was just below them. And this shows the different indicators. It shows the weighted achievement score, shows the value added growth score, school quality student success score. You can see the A is the weighted achievement. You notice the A is almost all the way around. They got 90, that's really good. Now this one is school quality. Now you see over on the left, you can select the report type, and this one is the school quality and student success. You can see their overall SQSS score there compared to the state average in that box. Now you can look at, you notice down at the bottom part of the slide it shows chart data, so you can look at either charts or data. Now notice here in the middle of this chart, it says reading at grade level, and then there's a little down arrow. You can click to look at each of the different indicators. Like you can look at reading, you could look at their ACT, there's two different kinds of ACT scores you can look at. You can look at their ACT benchmark score, you can look at their composite score. There's a lot of different things included in the SQSS, so this will let you select which part of the SQSS that you want to look at. Okay, that's all those.
Any questions or feedback about our ESSA School Index reports? So we have currently we have 3 reports: an accountability at a glance that Lewis showed you very quickly, that lets you look at both state and federal, and then the ESSA School Index that really unpacks that index for all students as well as for each subgroup by indicator and the components then of SQSS. So that little feature in the SQSS page is really important to drop down, and that's how I was telling you previously. I was looking at a school that had a really good overall score for all students, but as we were looking at weighted achievement and growth to see where they were, but then when we went to the SQSS and dropped down to the reading on or above grade level, then that's where we could find that there's a projected problem about to happen in that district if something intervention is not taken place. So if you'll bring that back up for us, thank you, sir. We're on the other one. Yeah. So, we met week ago Friday now, May 18th, with our committee of practitioners. And that's a group that comes in that helps us look at all things federal. And Dan, if you'll take me to slide 30, please. During that meeting with them, we go over some of the similar things that we go over with you, but we go over everything dealing with anything federal. So any change to anything federal, any communications, whatever. And so one of the things that I talked to them about, and I wanted to talk to you about today, is a plan to evaluate our ESSA plan. And so at our technical advisory committee meeting in March, we talked to our TAC members about a plan to evaluate our ESSA plan to see does our ESSA school index really tell us what we need to know about our schools in order to make them better learning places for kids? Does it really, what is it really telling us valuable information? So our stakeholders told us what they wanted to put and how they wanted to weight it, but now we need to run an evaluation on it to see if it's really telling us. Is it really bringing about that change? So if you've been watching our state jobs page, we've just recently advertised for a program evaluator. That advertisement has closed, and we'll be interviewing. I think I have 40-something candidates for that job. We'll be going through those, but we really sparked the interest of our TAC, and Wanda Brott said we were one of the first states to be really talking so immediately after approval to be talking about how would we evaluate this. And so, in fact, at the accountability conference that we recently went to, Dr. DeBrott was one of our main speakers, and he really had been thinking on this. We'd really sparked his thoughts on how to evaluate an ESSA plan. And so he put together kind of a template for us that we'll be utilizing, and I wanted you to kind of start wrapping your mind around it, because this is the way that we see it working. So we'll be looking at our claims. We'll be thinking about our assumptions. So when we said growth should be 50%, we did that because our stakeholders said growth should be 50%. And so what we'll be looking to see is that data really informing our work, and is it really showing us the ability to show that progress that we're desiring? That's just one example. All of the components that we put into our school quality and student success indicator, what do they really tell us? Are they being redundant? Maybe we've been redundant on purpose, like for reading, because we wanted to make such an impact on that. But what is it really telling us? If you remember, our stakeholders also gave us a list of other items that we put in the B and C column in our plan that said we want to look at them for the future. So a part of this evaluation plan is to begin evaluating what would they tell us. If we were using those indicators, what could they tell us? Do we have data to tell us? What might we need to research to find out how to collect data? So that's where the research and evaluation sources come in, and then how will we report this data back to our stakeholders so that stakeholders have confidence, because the thing we know is, or we believe we know, is that the feds will ask us to update our plan at some period. We were originally told that we would do that in 4 years. So we'll see if that comes true, but any good plan needs to be monitored and then adjusted, and that's what we've talked to you about today, is some little tweaking monitoring that we're doing because of ELA cut scores, but we need to plan for some big monitoring of our plan to see if it's working so that we can make adjustments. So I wanted you to kind of have this tool and be thinking about it, because as we get that person in place to be our program evaluator, we'll be coming back with some of those questions that we'll be studying for you to give us feedback on. Yeah, that question makes sense, or what about this question you haven't thought about? In addition to that, I wanted to let you know that ESSA does require us to do some additional monitoring and to think about our monitoring a little differently. And so one of the things that we propose to our committee of practitioners and that we will be submitting to the federal government by the end of June is a federal monitoring plan. Bobby's team has put together a very comprehensive evaluation tool that we will be submitting. But what I wanted you to know is that we will continue to follow a tiered monitoring process. We do an annual, yearly desk monitoring of all federal programs. If you receive federal funds, we do a yearly audit. We go through a process in our office because we have so much data now that we have accessible to us. If we need additional information, we will request that for clarification. And if we need to do a deeper dive because something just doesn't feel right or we just need to understand something better, we will do that. If it involves needing additional information, we'll contact the district for that additional information. We do reserve the right to do on-site monitoring as needed, but it may be requested. We have had school districts say, would you please come do an on-site monitoring because maybe there are new people in the district and they just want to know if they're doing things well, if they're doing them right. I've appreciated that because we're not looking to ding a district, but the districts that have requested on-site monitoring have been very appreciative of having that level of review to help them move forward most effectively. You could receive an on-site monitoring for part or all of the programs based on some of the risks that have shown themselves, or just because we are sampling. We're just sampling to make sure that everything's going like we expect it to go. In addition to that, your monitors, your auditors are checking as well. But we need to provide a more comprehensive plan for monitoring. Any questions about that?
Is there going to be any, I don't know, overlap between this and maybe and then the support and standards that's
Sure.
going out?
Yeah, and so exactly. What we hope that will occur is that school districts will be more proactive and say to our standards and system support, hey, I want you to look at this. But also I think as those team members are reviewing all of the materials that we now have available to them, and through their standards and systems review, they'll be not only looking at their SAS system, but they'll be reading all of the things that school districts are putting on their websites, just to say, do these things all make sense? And just being another set of critical eyes to give feedback back to the district, so that if we can prevent problems, that's our goal.
Right.
Letting problems occur and persist become costly to all of us, mostly to the student, but financially they can become costly to the district and the state. So we're trying to be more preventative in our support. A part of our work in that monitoring process, we have asked our school districts not to copy materials, not to create a tub, because it takes up a lot of time and it's redundant. What we are asking our school districts to do is to have a records retention plan. Now, I say this with confidence. We've created one at the department. And if we can do it, I feel confident that school districts can do it. I can help you walk through that process, but I think we do it now, and we do it very well. In our division alone, we have wiped out 2 rooms of storage cabinets. We're scanning documents in now. We've set up folders online that we're housing documents. We're now able to retrieve documents so much faster. Before, we had to go to the storage building and dig through boxes. Now, if we have a clue when it happened or have a name, we can go right into our online systems and pull things up. So I'm just trying to move us all into the 21st century. By having a records retention policy and a plan of action that everyone is trained on and utilizes, we can reduce so much cost. We can make our retrieval so much more efficient. And that's certainly our goal. We've included in that in our standards for accreditation in 3C1, so I wanted you to be aware of that. But it's also a requirement under federal guidance. Under federal guidance, you must retain your federal documents for a period of 3 years from the date of submission of the final expenditure report, or, and then it goes on some information if you're providing additional reports. So lots of times we've talked about you must retain your records from the time the money came in for a period of years, but the new guidance is that last piece from then on you must retain for a period of 3 years. If you want to retain them for, great. But part of this is being efficient and effective and cleaning out some of your old files to make room for new. We have a lot of great tools. Many of our school districts are utilizing a server to back up. I was just encourage you to make sure you have a backup system. We talked about in our committee of practitioners, somebody said, well, I have it on a flash drive. Well, that's great until it gets lost. So you need to have a system, but you need to have a backup system so that you've reduced all of those risks for loss. So when we do monitoring on site, we're asking our school districts not to make copies, but to have a records retention plan so that when we ask for something, your retrieval of that information is timely. So that you can say, oh yes, let me pull that up for you and show it to us, and instead of having to make unlimited copies.
And just to say on that, takes very deliberate action, and it has to be, I mean, you have to get very intentional about a records retention policy and cleaning up all the old paper files. But we've seen positive results. We were spending $20,000+ a year on a warehouse here in Little Rock, and there was no need for it. I mean, it was just boxes and boxes of documents. So we had to set a deadline. If you don't set deadlines, it's not going to happen. But we set a deadline and we got it done. So the technology is there to do that. We wanted to model it, and then two, we as a department we don't want to create a system or maintain a system where we have to pull paper if it's not necessary. I mean, there will be times where it will be necessary, but in most cases now, the tools are out there. They're not expensive. There are expensive solutions that you can buy, but there are very cost-efficient solutions too. So it's kind of a plug out to not just to you all, but to whoever's listening. It can be done, and if you want help with that, we'd be glad to help you. What to keep, what not to keep. There's an assumption, there's urban legends over what you have to keep and how long you have to keep it. We will be very helpful if you want that help to learn what it is you have to keep for how long, and then what you can get rid of, shred.
I think that, really for us, it's just the accessibility is so much better if you move to a system that is going to be an electronic platform. And there are actually services, you're right, there are services today that you can purchase. There's systems you can buy, but you can also just purchase a cloud computing service where an entity will take care of all of that for you. Of course, the price range is varied on all of those options, but you can create a lot of space when you remove some of those files.
Is there any guess, guidance on if, what and if there is available that follows law, like looking at, student information and things like that?
So yes, some of our rules give some details about data that must be kept. I believe is it the Attorney General's office that produces a document on records retention that's available? But I'll tell you just from our perspective, we started out from the commissioner's office and worked out. And we made a list of everything that came into the office that we felt needed to be retained. And we made a list. And so when I say, don't try to give fancy titles to your folders. So if we said letters signed by the commissioner, that's what we called the folder. And when you go into our main document, letters signed by the commissioner for 2017-18 are all in a folder. And then they're named appropriately, but we didn't try to give any catchy titles. We also stopped a process where we each had a file server space or a folder by our names. But when we retired, that just went away and everything in it. Yeah. And so we now have a universal system where it doesn't matter who works here, these tools are available. And then it also has a date on there of when they're ready to be deleted, or if they can. Now, some financial documents cannot be deleted and must be maintained in paper form.
And what about sending electronic files? Are there laws that say, you hear it, you say, oh, you can't send that student information document without having, things like that, storing and sending electronic files?
So anything that has student data, student information on there, I'd be very careful about, that you followed all of the federal guidance on that. And our team's very happy to help you walk through any of that. I would, secure delivery systems are always the best in doubt. One of the things I wanted you to be aware of is under federal guidance, when the documents are electronic and cannot be altered, such as PDFs, then there's no need to create and retain a paper copy. And that's going to be an important sentence for some of you if you have a pack rat in your team that loves a good backup. If you have a good backup system to your storage system, then hopefully over time they'll be willing to let some of those files go. I'll say that some of our team members that have been the biggest pack rats have done that purposefully, and we've been very thankful they have, because when we've looked for things, they've always had them. They have been some of our best supporters in getting all of our files put into our new records retention plan, and so we're really excited about this work. We think it's a good move for our school districts. Many of our school districts have already moved to this, but just in case some of them haven't, we're giving the nudge. All right, so that brings us kind of to the end of our presentation today. We wanted to bring you an update of all of the information, but we wanted to continue to talk to you about how do we do a better job of communicating. We know that those 2018 reports are going to come out in October, and so what is it that we have not done, or what did we do that you really appreciated? What have we not done that we need to do before those next reports come out, so that people are ready and that they understand them? What we're continuing to do is to put information on our website. We are going out this summer to talk at all of the co-ops in their co-op summer meetings with superintendents and/or principals. We continue to speak at conferences. In fact, we have partnered with the School Board Association to go out with them for their regional tours this fall. So we're very excited about that. In fact, we just presented at their joint conference and had such good feedback from the school
I think that you all have done a tremendous job with communication. I think in years past, the expectation was if we wanted information, we would have to come to the department to get it. But it seems that more and more we're seeing the department out all over the state at our co-ops and at conferences. And I just want to commend you. Great job with that level of communication. But that's going to be the key as we have these reports that come in October, just taking advantage of all the different forms of or the different platforms that we can use to communicate. Social media is tremendous. All the videos that have been created have been very helpful. Been helpful even at the co-op level with being able to share and go back and go over some of the different areas of the presentation. So you can never over communicate, but I think you're doing a great job with communication with regards to SN accountability. Communication. I couldn't even say accountability.
And then, you know, on top of that, y'all are doing a wonderful job. There's a lot out there. I refer people all the time to the website or to Facebook page or things like that. But I think, you know, really letting districts, you know, talking to districts about really pushing that out to their communities. I think that's the biggest piece is, you know, having fun situations or, you know, bringing families in and really talking about what it is that's going on in Arkansas.
Well,
And
we
putting
have
it
a
in their terms.
we have a team that is working on that, don't we, Ms. Abels? Yeah. One thing that we may have missed an opportunity in the feedback on number 5, evaluation of Arkansas ESSA plan. Part of that is was the peer review of the ACT Aspire, and I think Susan was here, was going to speak to that, but she slipped out. Can you or Denise okay, we got it back and it was good news, but it's still relatively fresh, and that has been an uncertainty, I think, for us. Is there are two questions that we have gotten in the last 2 years. One is ACT Aspire aligned to the standards? And that was part of the peer review, and up to this point, the answer has been yes, and there's still a step, and we can get that information, or maybe in the next meeting we can give a report on that. And the other is, I hear we're getting rid of ACT Aspire, and that's not true. I don't know where that comes from or why it keeps coming back, but that is a question that we get as we are out and about. So, you know, just one, we have good news on the peer review. We have some follow-up information that we need to provide, and ACT Aspire is working with us on that. And then the second is, no, ACT Aspire is here for the foreseeable future, and we feel like that it's going to meet our needs moving forward. Okay.
Just a question on the communication. Has it been a lot of two-way conversations when you're going to the groups where you're getting the feedback from them as far as being able to input it into some of the ongoing changes? Have you gotten a lot of that sort of feedback, or has it been more informative type sessions?
So I think we've gotten some two-way communication going on. I think mostly what I think we've heard is people are eager to know what we're going to do about those items that we had in B and C for the SPSS. And so I think part of this evaluation will be important for communicating that to the public. So when we sent out review on our business rules, that's mostly what we got back. Like, when are you going to put this into the ESSA School Index? Not knowing that any of those, that would be a substantial change that we would have to take back to the feds for an amendment.
Right.
And so we need to run some data on those before we're ready to request an amendment. But it's still exciting that people are interested in, you know, knowing more about our schools. And so I think that's been a big part. guidance that's just coming out. In fact, Lewis has got a new document that's come out from CCSSO that's helping us to look at all of the changes we're gonna have to make to our report cards. And so we want to share that with them.
We just received from CCSSO, it's called the Handbook for Completion of the State Report Card, and that every student succeeds that. You might be aware that after the ESSA law was passed by Congress, there were over 200 pages of rules about how to implement the law. They were produced by the federal government, and in January 2017, the federal government came out with the guidance for state report cards. And then after that, the Congress repealed all the rules, and the report card guidance included both the law and the rules. So what CCSSO is trying to do with this partly is to include what's really necessary, what was not in the guidance just because it's part of the rules that were revoked. There are quite a few new things that are required by the ESSA law. Like before, we had economically disadvantaged scores in the report card, but now we add the non-economically disadvantaged scores, a line for that. We had like students with disabilities, now we'll have a line for non-children with disabilities. We'll be adding homeless, foster children, students with a parent that's in active duty in the military. We'll be adding lines for that. We're adding information for teachers and school leaders, information about them. Quite a few new things that we'll be adding to the report card.
Just one more comment about communication. I think one of the things that when we, in the very beginning, when we started this ESSA plan, that the public got so excited about was that, you know, they were having a voice and they were being listened to. And I just want to make sure that we don't, once we've got the plan and know we're on ongoing evaluation, that we don't lose those avenues for that communication, that they can still have input. You know, this is working in my district, this is not working. Or a parent or a community member or a business leader, you know, just that input, you know, whether it's something that can be done statewide or not, but I still think that we need to have those avenues where we can listen, because I think that's what got the public so excited about, hey, this is going to really bring change to education in Arkansas.
Any other suggestions?
Just one thing that I wanted to say, Ms. Newton, you talked about the one-way versus two-way communication, and I think there's been a mix, and I think there's also been a mix of what Deb described of the folks who really dug in, and then maybe some who less so at this point. Some of the other conversation that I wanted to make sure you all heard too, so that we can kind of encourage the right focus. You know, there's probably in some districts an inordinate amount of focus on SQSS versus growth and achievement. And, you know, so one of the encouragements that I'll be talking to superintendents about this summer is that if you're spending all your time on SQSS, you're spending all of your time on 15% or a portion of 15%. While it's not unimportant, it needs to be measured, you know, so at least, you know, maybe spend 15% of your time on that and 50% of your time on how do you improve growth, how do you improve classroom instruction. Those are the conversations that really need to take place in our schools. So that's, you know, just a sense of I mean, they're having conversations, which is good. We want to make sure we're having the right conversations or the right balance of conversations.
So our final question then is our next steps for our next meeting. And knowing that our plan is to produce our 2018 ESSA School Index reports in October, we're going with early October. When does it make sense that we have our next ESSA steering committee meeting?
What do you recommend?
Well, I'm kind of internal debates, you know, with me, myself, and I. And part of me says, oh, let's have it right before we publicly release. And then next part of me says, no, let's get the data out there and then let's have a meeting and bring attention to what we're finding. So,
Go ahead.
Would a meeting right before do anything to change the outcome of what happens when you release it? Like, is it gonna be enough time to do anything about it?
and we always reserve that right, that if something comes up, we can call you and say, we need to have a meeting. But right now, with no, unforeseen emergencies, we feel that we've got a pretty tight plan for being ready in October. So what I'm kind of sensing from you is it makes sense to then have it sometime, toward the end of October where we can really talk about what's our data showing us. And by that time, we could be ready.
What are
to
you
start
hearing? What conversations
identifying
are?
schools.
I think that would be a good idea.
And any topics that you want us to be prepared for?
I would, the concordance that we were talking about earlier between the 17, 18, and how that's working
How
out.
did it work?
Yeah.
Any updates on the peer review process?
And by that time, I hope to have a program evaluator in place that brings us a really great draft of how we plan to evaluate.
Yeah, by then we'll have results from our focus groups from Battelle too. So I think that'll be, I mean, we may not want to wait to get that information out once it's available, but having the opportunity to discuss it would be good. And I would love to hear you all bring feedback to us too. You know, this summer there's going to be a lot of conferences as normally takes place. So by then, I think you all may have been in a position or in a meeting or in a conference where you have heard some feedback. Would love to hear that as well, of what worked, what didn't work, what are we doing well, what can we do better yet in some of those conversations. All right, thank you. Okay. Thank you to Deb and team. Any other comments, thoughts, questions, or items that we haven't covered? All right. Thank you all for being here today. We're adjourned.